Hello, and welcome to Revamped, a rewatch podcast that revisits my top favorite shows and movies. I'm your host, Brandon Alexander, joined by my co-host,
Courtney Autumn.
Venture with us as we set our sights on the infamous Hellmouth to cover 90s cult classic, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Follow along from the beginning, spoiler-free, as Courtney views the show for the first time and I revisit the series for new takes and a fresh perspective on its narrative.
Each season, every episode, in order, we will follow Buffy Summers and her friends to examine their character development, the show's underlying themes, along with its major story arcs, all while engaging in conversations, sharing our own authentic thoughts and feelings to what's unfolding before us.
So sharpen your stakes, load your crossbows, and join us as we explore the supernatural world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Revamped. Today, we will be discussing Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 2, Episode 15, Phases. This episode aired January 27th, 1998, written by Rob Desautels, a.k.a. Manuela Desatella, and Dean Batali, directed by our favorite, Bruce Seth Green.
Seth Green, a.k.a. Oz, a.k.a. a werewolf.
Remember last episode, we were like, what do you think Phases is going to be about? Now you clearly know what Phases was meaning to, literal moon phases, which I'm surprised you said nothing about the moon in your foreshadowing of Slayer Up predictions, but this points to the phases of the moon, which affect werewolves, but has other meanings as well. Willow, 3 days out of the month, can be seen as a phase, as she jokes later. The phasing between demon and human, werewolf to a man, is a phase. And the reflection on the dialogue from Innocence, where Angelus tells Spike after he comments, "No more of this, I've got a soul crap." Angelus replies, "What can I say? I was going through a phase," which all our Scoobies have been going through, the last couple of episodes, technically. So this episode has dual meanings all around. I should say triplicities. All the meanings. All the things. Guest stars for the episode, we have Jack Connolly as Kane. Remember him? Because just like Luke did, or Brian Thompson, he will reappear at some point as another potential character along the series. I won't say which one. Then we have Megan Perry as Teresa. Poor Teresa. XO, rest in peace. Gossip Girl.
I know, seriously.
She was so innocent. She should have been on last episode. And finally, for our last guest star, we have Keith Campbell as the werewolf in the costume. Because Seth Green is all of 5'2", like we are, so...
Yes, I didn't put that into full perspective.
This week on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, when a werewolf descends upon Sunnydale, Buffy encounters a ruthless poacher determined to hunt the creature for sport. As the danger escalates, Willow's relationship with Oz deepens, leading to the shocking revelation that he is the werewolf. Now the gang must find a way to safeguard Oz from the poacher's deadly pursuit while navigating their own perilous situation. I love how you always tune. You be like this whenever I start reading those things. You're like, what did he come up with this week? Okay, yeah, this is a really fun episode. I don't think I would call it much of a filler, just because we actually get some expansion on our characters and some stuff happening. We needed a break from the drama of last episode and the seriousness that was going on there. And this one is a little bit of a lighter episode, even though it does have a little bit of mild intensity to it, between Oz and everything like that. I feel like it is a mini Willow Oz-centric episode. I wouldn't call it a full-on Oz-centric episode because it does center around him, but there's so much other involvement with everybody else going on in the episode as well, especially for Willow. But it does give him a new dynamic for the show and the gang. I also like how Oz wasn't already a werewolf. This is just a new occurrence that happened to him literally as the episode was unfolding. I love the fact also that Oz turned out to be a werewolf because Buffy and Angel's relationship, this makes it a little more complicated for Willow. So this kind of puts a new element out there for us going forward with the fact that 3 days out of the month he's literally a werewolf. So how are they going to deal with that, which is going to be interesting from your perspective coming into it, not knowing what could happen and come of that. He eats Willow, I'm sorry to tell you.
Spoiler.
But of course no relationship can be pure in this town, so I have to put that out there as well. Just saying. But
no, and really it made me glad that this episode went there, because just as Willow was kind of stating in the beginning, she didn't want to be the one girl in school that didn't have a normal boyfriend, quote unquote, which obviously she immediately regretted saying to Buffy, all people. But It's just funny that those exact words were the ones that came out of her mouth, and then it just so ended up being that she is the last one to have a normal boyfriend because she doesn't either,
Yeah.
so it was interesting, but I like the fact that it went there because I feel like it'll give Buffy someone to lean on in a way that only Willow can now relate to. And
Hmm.
really, that would have been such a lonesome journey, I think, for Buffy to walk because who can really relate to her? No one else is dating a vampire or a werewolf or a
Yeah.
hyena or
Something with
whatever.
this danger element and stuff like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, it's good for
Yeah.
that because this is a way to progress Willow's relationship with Buffy. I didn't even really think about that. I talk about the parallels a little bit later between two other characters a little bit more, primarily being Oz and Larry's kind of like paralleling between like their
Mhm.
coming out story and stuff,
Yeah.
like essentially
Yeah.
being what it is. But more than anything, I think I like the fact that Willow was always in that despair over Xander and tormenting herself with that shit. And now Willow can just have a chance to be happy, even if it's like not going to come easy, I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah. But that's what
But
makes it worth it. So,
and then obviously as the episode unfolded, we had a little speck of Angelus thrown in there because they were like, we don't need to bring him around too much from last episode because everybody's probably still like not ready for that. And I'm surprised because you think it would just be balls to the wall, but he is barely in the episode. Being the
yeah.
main threat, it still shows that he's looming as a threat in the background,
Mhm.
like, which kind of makes it feel like we're led on a, I don't know, a deeper level of anticipation. Because watching this episode, you're like, why is an angel in it more? Is he going to appear more? And then, you get into the next one, and I'll spoil a little bit. He's not too much in that one either. So it's kind of like what they were doing with Spike and Drusilla whenever we were watching the earlier episodes before leading up to What's My Line. We were like, where the fuck these bitches been at? It's been 3 episodes. They don't have like all this happen when they ain't even out here. But
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, and that's what I think I appreciated about this episode because for what could be a filler episode but isn't a filler episode, I like that they didn't let you completely forget about what's going on
Mm-hmm.
before or behind the scenes or not in the forefront of your mind right now, whereas like you said with the Spike and Drusilla stuff, like I completely forgot about their existence for 3 whole episodes until they showed
Literally.
them again and I was like, oh wait, these fuckers are still there, like I forgot.
Yeah.
So at least with this one I appreciated that they kept that there as a reminder, like, okay, we're dealing with this huge mystery of a werewolf problem, but don't forget, like, we still
Mm-hmm.
have a bigger fucking problem lurking. So I really, really like this episode for the fact that it could have been a filler, and I think would have in other times been a filler, but it wasn't that
Mm-hmm.
complete like energy. Like you said, it was more than that because of the intensity. And I was like, yes, thank you.
The only other thing that I want to preface before we get into it is because I gotta warn all these fucking Xander stands out here. I found myself triggered as fuck by Xander's constant annoyance this episode. It's been a long time since he's pissed me off. But just to forewarn, like I said, people ahead of time, I am going to hate on Xander this episode because he's a piece of shit dude in it entirely. So if you're a Xander apologist, click off this now and listen to future episodes or go and follow us. Do whatever the fuck it is that you do. I don't really care.
But
But
don't, because
on
listen, don't, because I'm gonna rebuttal all of that because literally in these notes, everyone will want to tune into this episode. Actually, this will be the first time you and I are not on the same page about Xander
you
because
think
I
so?
literally wrote in my notes that Xander is really growing on me, and I actually really
Oh
appreciated
no.
parts of him in this episode. So
You guys,
we're gonna duke it out on this one.
I'm gonna stop recording so that way we can find me a new co-host. I'm just kidding. No, but I mean, I feel like that'll be fair discussion, and I welcome that kind of energy. But just like some of the stuff that goes on it, you'll hear my
No, I hear
perspective, and
you.
it'll be interesting to hear where you combat. And like, there's a few Xander parts that I really like in it. Like, I really like his whole scene with Larry and stuff later. It's kind of like a ha ha, rub your face in it kind of thing. But
Mhm.
yeah, there's some stuff that I'll present to you, and maybe that'll like give you the additional perspective of what I'm thinking and what I was rolling
Yeah,
with going
agreed.
through. But
Mhm.
yeah, are you ready to get into the episode?
Yes.
All right, let's go to see the full moon outside. Let's go do some magic. Just kidding.
In every generation, there is a chosen one. She alone will stand against the vampires, the demons, and the forces of darkness. She is the Slayer.
We open at Sunnydale High as Oz is curiously looking into the trophy cabinet display in the main hall, swaying back and forth in front of Catherine the Great's trophy specifically. Willow comes in greeting him, asking what is he doing. He mentions how the trophy's eyes seem to follow you, swaying again with it to state, I like it. And oh my god, call back, because Catherine is in that damn thing looking at Oz still, and you remember at the end of Witch, her little eyes was like,
Mhm.
So this bitch is still hanging out in here. She knows she's hungry and she wants that lock off that refrigerator and she needs to eat some food. But I thought it
Need
was
some
so
brownies.
unique, right? Them brownies. Yeah, that was Amy, but same thing. So unique though that they put this in the show. And I love how Willow doesn't even bat an eye at it. She just kind of like looks over it at one time and then looks back at him and then they walk off from it because no one knows where she went. So Willow doesn't know that she's in that trophy. So she's just like, oh yeah, I'm not even going to get into that story. And she's like, anyways, love me, Oz. Apparently Willow and Oz saw a movie together the night before too, because they walk and talk about that, and she was in high regards of the popcorn that they had. She's like, but popcorn, she more than anything like the time that they spent together. And Willow totally wants to kiss him bye after their like talk, but doesn't know how to end this reaction, like not awkwardly as they start to split ways, because she's just kind of standing there
It was
like,
so awkward.
so weird. Thankfully, Willow notices Buffy as her way out and runs off to meet her friend. Larry comes up to Oz, and we got Larry back in the episode, obviously, as well. We haven't seen him, I think, since Halloween. He comes up with two other guy friends to be gross, saying how he would love to get some of that Willow-Buffy action, and Oz is just like, okay, bro, but not. And the three guys gawk over the girl's ass when Larry knocks her books out of her hands when she walks by, and he's like, oh, yeah, like doing all that fucking toxic masculine bullshit jock crap. Like I was like, ugh. But I also knew it was to come, so I was like, oh, this is funny. Larry questions Oz on his dating a junior style, wondering if Willow's innocent school girl thing is just an act. And it is, as Oz tells him she's an evil mastermind, and it's fun. Larry isn't buying it and wants to know, like it's any of his biz, how far they've gotten. You hear nowhere as Willow answers to Buffy in some cutscene transition magic, and we see them two walking outside, and she is ready to pick up things in her relationship with Oz, aka she wants smoochies. She's like, I need smoochies. Buffy retorting,
I'll come around. No guy could resist your wily Willow charms.
Willow going on about his A+ rating and like gold stars. She's like, I want Oz to get a gold star. I'm like, she's so corny, but she also doesn't want to be the only girl in school without a boyfriend, unintentionally making Buffy feel like shit after the Angel drama too, because she has to go on and apologize.
Oh, I'm such an idiot. I'm sorry. I shouldn't even be talking about... Do you want me to go away?
She's like, did I do too much, Which is, once again, top tier good friend energy, because she like steps back, and Buffy claims that would be a no for her. The two discussing how Buffy's been, her saying she's basically not able to go without thinking about Angel longer than 2 minutes, but would be feeling a lot better if the two of them and Xander could do that share in each other's misery thing that night. Willow thinks that that's a great idea. She will call Xander later on his phone number.
What's his number? Oh, yeah. 1-800 I'm dating a skanky hoe.
1-800 I am dating a skanky hoe. I know you had to bust out laughing whenever she said that
died.
shit.
I love Willow.
Meow, very catty. We don't usually see that from Willow.
I was like, she done got herself a boyfriend and then came out with an attitude.
Mm-hmm. And then she goes on to like say that she doesn't even understand what Xander sees in Cordelia, as we flash over to him and her that evening in the car making out, which is interrupted because all Xander can talk about is Willow and Oz and how he is weary of Oz, listing off all the potential problems like being a senior in a band, like the basic shit. Cordelia completely calls this motherfucker out too, because she's like, do you even want to be here?
I'm not running away.
Because when you're not babbling about poor, defenseless Willow, you are raving about the all-powerful Buffy.
I do not babble. I occasionally run on. Every now and then I yammer.
Xander.
Yeah.
Look around.
And he doesn't totally deny this, but she tells him to shut the fuck up so they can actually enjoy their makeout sesh under the big full moon. They had to point out that the moon was full as they make out. We pan out from the car to see a big ass werewolf basking in the moonlight as well, aka watching them and growling. And then we cue the Buffy theme. Okay, before we rejoin them making out again, because obviously the scene picks right back up where we left off, I want to point out Cordelia taking notice to Xander being a dick, because he is over here trying to discuss with her how obviously he is bitter over Willow and Oz, because he's not the leading man in her eyes anymore. And that's one of the small little things that started to bother me about Xander. To the girl that he's basically dating, they're trying to make out, and he's like over here talking about Willow and Oz, like not just as a friend over here being like, I'm concerned for her because he is a musician and this is out of her element. He's doing this for a different reason, because he's pissed off that Willow's finally getting attention that's off of him, especially even after how she reacted last episode. So whatever. And Cordelia knows that he pines over Buffy as well. Like, she's already clocked that shit. No one's told Cordelia that he had a crush on Buffy. Willow knows, but I'm pretty sure that they ain't been talking about that. You know what I mean? Behind closed doors. Behind closet doors. Behind closet closed doors. And then like he doesn't even deny anything. He just changes his words around a little bit. He's like, I don't do that all the time. You know what I mean? Like, but he acknowledges that he does do that. And this is for me the same shit, different day that we've been discussing since last season. And this is what frustrates people over Xander. I think it's his lack of awareness. Really, this is not cute behavior in my opinion. Just seeing him talking about this, I'm like, you have undoubtedly the most gorgeous girl after Buffy. You're making out with this fucking total hottie that's actually giving you the time of day, and she has this higher status than anything you probably ever could have pulled in. Like, this is a 2 going for a 10. Not that I think Xander's a 2, but you get the analogy. And then he's just obsessing over this. And then she's also clocking out both for 2 episodes in a row now, because she made the comment about Buffy before they kissed and Willow caught them last episode. And now she's making a comment about, like, it's not just Willow, like you rant about all the time, it's Buffy too. Can you shine the spotlight on me? I just saw it as not very fair for Cordelia. She's taken this time to get away from her old lifestyle to enter into this new circle and then gets treated this way.
I think for me, there's 2 elements that stand in the way. I do see it your way 100% because it is the same situation as always, because like you just said, we've been talking about this since season 1. It's just a different people are in question now because Cordelia wasn't, reciprocating Xander at that time. But for me, Xander's Xander. And I feel like right now I have yet to see him get something that he wants and then not immediately start looking over the fence kind of situation. So it's almost like in his nature and I'm used to it. So maybe it's like, not that it's not annoying, but it's stopped being like the focal point of what I'm annoyed about when it comes to stuff like this, because it's literally just Xander being Xander. He has Cordy, which is the girl he's been pining over since we opened the scene of Buffy starting, and now he's worried all of a sudden about Willow and what she's doing, or Buffy and what she's doing. And it's kind of like, well, first it was Willow was pining over you, and then every time Willow starts to get her attention going elsewhere, that's when you start pining after her, and then who's ever giving you attention, you stop paying attention to them. It's just this constant trifecta of bullshit that he always does. Like, he'll never be able to see, because like you said, he has no awareness, so he's never going to be able to see what's in front of him while he has it. But then he'll always play the victim later, kind of situation. So that's like just Xander in a nutshell. And yeah, it would bother me too for Cordy's standpoint, like being the receiver of someone who's basically absent-minded while they're with you physically in this romantic setting especially. But how confusing is it for Xander when Cordelia keeps saying, like, I don't want to be exclusive, I don't want anyone to know, like she still talks to him like basically she's ashamed of his existence, and then continues to take him in private isolated places to make out with him. So it's like, how is he not supposed to still talk to her as just her friend when she keeps friend zoning him in spite of how she's physically acting to him in private? Like, I would almost do the same thing, because I'm like, at the end of the day, we are just friends. You're just using me to make out with when you want to, so it's kind of like, it can go both ways here. But I felt for both of them, but I was almost more irritated, like, in Cordy's position, I was irritated with Xander, but I was almost irritated for Xander, because I'm like, Xander, why are you continuously making out with her when she's the one that's like, clearly your mind is elsewhere. So don't put yourself in this position or her in this position, but simultaneously think about the fact that she's going to continue to friend zone you if you continue to let her friend zone you, and you're continuing to let her do that. So that was like, I was annoyed with both of them basically.
Yeah,
but I see your point too.
Yeah, and I just targeted him, but like Cordelia's so used to being in the spotlight and being the hot shit girl, and she's really getting irritated more so because this is the first time a guy isn't like treating her like Mitch did or anybody else, is like the center of the universe, and she's like, oh wow, there are other people at play here. It's not just Cordelia. It's not me, like she said in Out of Sight, Out of Mind or whatever. Out of Mind, Out of Sight actually is
basically they're fighting the same war, you know what I mean? Because she's all of a sudden not the center of Xander's attention even when they're together, and then Xander's not all of a sudden the center of Willow's attention, so he's making that his attention. So it just is this whole thing where everybody's bothered by not being the center of each other's attention, and I'm just like, get over each other.
Other thing I'll say though is that technically this episode fully kicks off the fact that they're in a relationship now. I know it doesn't physically address that, but since the gang knows about them now, they're actually actively dating, because the next episode has a little bit, like, you can actually fully see that. I'm not really giving a spoiler or a breadcrumb or anything like that, but it's fully confirmed as we move along after this phase episode that they've entered the next phase of their relationship, like
Gotcha.
with this episode.
So they
as
are
well.
more like public, basically.
They are public now. They are dating and stuff
Okay.
like that for sure.
Okay, gotcha.
And we'll see the fruition of that as we kind of like go into the next episode. That's your breadcrumb.
Well, that makes sense though, then from your perspective, knowing that they are a little bit more public, you know what I mean? And if that's the case and they are exclusively dating and he's behaving that way, then yeah, I'm fully annoyed with Xander. Because you don't act like that as someone's boyfriend, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It changes the narrative totally if they're not exclusively dating and she's the one who made that choice continuously to friend zone him. But if they are exclusively dating and you're sitting here making out with your straight up girlfriend talking about 2 other people, yeah, no, you're gonna get 2K'd per slave one day.
Well, that's interesting. We appear back with the two making out when Xander's hearing strange noises that are not Willow's distress call. They attempt to kiss again, and he hears it again, and she gets mad, saying that she's just going to drop his ass off at home since he's been distracted and wasted her time. And I was writing in my notes, I was like, good for you, Cordy. And like, go take his ass home then. If he ain't want to pay you attention, just go drop him off. He obviously ain't got no license in driving, so just go take his ass home. But also bad for them, because at the time that she says this, the werewolf hand rips through the roof, freaking them the fuck out. And thankfully, Cordy still got them prophecy girl ex-witch driving skills and slings the wolf off the hood and drives away, escaping. Were you excited about the classic werewolf being our monster of the week when you saw him out in the woods?
Honestly, I was shocked that I never thought about it before, like predicted it in like an episode thing or something, because it's so in alignment with vampires and this whole world kind of thing. So I'm honestly shocked that it didn't come up sooner in this whole series. But yeah, I was really excited. I was like, oh shit, this whole show got me so distracted. I forgot werewolves even existed for a second. So I was like, oh shit.
Which is fun that they did the spin on it, because remember in the very first episode, whenever Giles talks to Buffy in the library, he's stacking those books under. He's like, everything you've all dreamed under your bed could be real, because he's like werewolves, incubi, succubi, like vampires, all the things like that. And it's kind of like when you look back at it now, you're like, oh, like that wasn't a foreshadow, but it was the possibility of going into the episode. But like you said, like I'm surprised something like that didn't pop up maybe like in the goofy camp of season 1. But I like that it waited till now and not even in earlier season 2, because of the fact that it's going to be Oz moving forward and all that stuff. So
yeah, it makes me think they intentionally like saved it, knowing that they wanted to like save that, you know, like concept or whatever for something more meaningful. So I'm glad that they did it this way and that they applied it to Oz of all people, because I've been waiting for something to go wrong with Oz.
You're like, something's wrong with him. And I was being truthful when I was like, nothing's wrong with him until this episode when he gets hit. The next day at school, the gang is checking out Cordy's ripped roof, and he's told them of the werewolf attack, aka tried to bite them, which was so awful, says Cordy. But not the attack. The fact that Daddy just had the car detailed and is messed up. Like that shit's funny, because she takes comfort and like goes over to Xander's chest to like coddle in it, and he's like, there, it's okay. And she's like, no, I'm not worried about you, I'm worried about my fucking car. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Giles comes up with a paper telling them that there were claims of other dog-like attacks around town, several mutilated animal carcasses being found.
You mean like bunnies and stuff? No, don't tell me.
Oh, don't worry. I mean, they might not look it, but bunnies can really take care of themselves.
Yeah.
No humans were harmed, and Giles has his work cut out for him, says Buffy, which Giles gets really excited over, because he's like,
I must admit, I am intrigued. The werewolves, it's one of the classics. I'm sure my books and I are in for a fascinating afternoon.
he was so excited about that. It was so fucking cute. He was totally happy about the research on the classic werewolf that he gets to perform. And Buffy's like, we need to get this motherfucker a pet. Like, he needs a bird or something that he can take care of.
He needs something.
What kind of pet would you give to Giles? What do you think Giles would have as a pet? Outside of your ordinary, I could see him with a cat immediately versus a dog, but outside of that realm, what next animal?
That's not even what I was going for. I was immediately thinking something more like reptilian in nature. I don't know, like a gecko or a snake or a lizard or something like that. A bearded dragon.
I could see him, a little bearded dragon with some glasses. And it's like a library style tank, like with sand on the ground.
Maybe I think that because of the gecko that used to be on the Gecko commercial, because he had like a British accent.
Oh, yeah.
That's Giles.
I love that. Cat. Can you imagine the setup of his terrarium though? Like if he did it right and he set up the library.
It would be a library.
And then he like did the hellmouth busting out from the bottom up with little wormies coming out and stuff. Like that would be me setting up my.
That's how he feeds them through the hellmouth.
I love it. Later in the day, we arrive in gym class, which is so fun. We haven't seen the gym since the pack, and we get the callback to that later. But apparently the old gym teacher was like fired because he's not teaching. It's a woman now. Because remember, the other guy was like, I love this sport when they're all being vicious with each other with a dodgeball and shit. I thought he was going to reappear in the episode. And he did not. She's lecturing the students about how Sunnydale be wilding out and with the full moon, how it brings out the crazies. So today they are going to be learning some basic self-defense because apparently also gym class doubles for martial arts. Like, true. Already. After she makes the comment though about like what they're doing for the day, Buffy whispers over to Willow what we've been saying all along. I got an idea. How about we move away from the Hellmouth? And I was like, very good advice, Buffy. How about you tell everybody else in class so that way they can all tell their parents when they get home and leave.
Follow through on those plans, Buffy.
Oz in that moment being cutesy to tuck Willow's shirt tag in as well. But then this is where Xander started to trigger me again because he's being fucking annoying to call him out across the class. And he's like, hey, this is a public forum and we don't need these kind of displays in here. And I was like, bruh, your girlfriend's sitting right back here. Shut the fuck up, Xander. You've clearly splashed on too much obsession for dorks, says Cordy anyways. And she helps to silence his ass in that moment. But I was like, how is she putting up with this? It's a continuation from last night. If anyone wants pointers on how to not treat your girlfriend, you can easily learn from Xander because there's no reason why he should be hollering over to if you were doing this, Courtney, you're my best fucking friend. And I'm still so sad that you date Meredith instead of me, but we're both gay. So it is what it is. But like, truly, I would never holler across the room and hate on you. I'd be like hyping it up. I'd be like, oh my God, did you see that? He just tucked her shirt tag in. Or like, totally. They're holding hands today. I'm so happy for them. I would literally be so happy for the other person or my quote unquote friend, my literal childhood friend that I've known since I was 2. Like,
I get it. No.
These are the elements that I was just like, boy, just shut up. Just shut up.
I forget it too from the standpoint of just Willow and Xander being friends because I also have that, extra element in mind of them and their weird, like, it's not even on again, off again thing. It's just Willow being obsessed with Xander and then Xander sometimes like conveniently reciprocating and then other times, most times not. Yeah. So like, I don't even know what to call that, but that also taints like the just friendship perspective, like they are not just friends. They've kind of like emotionally
there's a history
wishy-washy with each other, but beyond the friendship threshold. So for me, it's annoying for sure for Xander to be that way because I know you would be like rooting for your best friend regardless of anything. Like if that's your friend in present day, doesn't even matter how you felt 5, 10, 15 years ago, whatever, like that's your friend in this moment. So you're rooting for them, you're being supportive. And Xander cannot take himself like out of this like ego headspace, in my opinion, where it's just like, obviously his ego is bruised, so he's got to let everyone know about it.
I will say that I love it for that fact, though, that it's getting under his skin. Like, he deserves to be acting like how Willow was for him. So I do like that element of it because he's getting so fucking irritated with everything that's going on besides, like, with Cordelia. And it is kind of like, gotcha. Now it's your turn to, like, be in this position. So it is kind of interesting to think about it from that perspective as well.
Yeah, I think the only thing I don't like about it is then it becomes confusing because you don't really know, because they say oftentimes if you yourself are put in that position, that's when you really start knowing your feelings for someone based on seeing them with someone else kind of thing. And it's kind of like if it doesn't bother you, then you shrug it off and you're like, okay, maybe whatever I felt at some point wasn't really like as strong or whatever, and they are just my friend. Or if you do genuinely feel jealous and it's beyond the point of your ego, then you address those feelings. You usually in those circumstances where you're like, oh shit, you know what, maybe I kind of like them more than a friend, and like, I don't know, this feels weird, so it's so confusing from my perspective because I'm like, is he figuring out that he has feelings for Willow when this happens, or is it literally just a trope on his ego? Like,
yes, no, that's it. That's 100% it. We know that to be true, and like, it doesn't end here. This is my frustration also comes from the fact that I know the other stuff. When I've told you before that this isn't the last time Xander Harris will piss you off the pack style level, there's still some times to come, and there's still one big one railing off at the end of the season that is one that I'm just like, it's like this energy but like magnified 1,000. Like, so
Okay.
I'm coming from it from
Yeah.
that perspective too, knowing everything that unfolds. So
Of course.
it
Yeah.
adds to the annoyance, and I'll still always say it. I like Xander. I don't hate his guts. I like him on the show. I want his presence here, but it's just the things that just add up in the earlier seasons until we get to, like I said, the glorious season 5 and after, where Xander is finally like, okay,
Normal.
he's grown-ish.
No, I see it. But, it is also the fact that Cordy, like you said, is getting a taste of her own medicine simultaneously. So if it wasn't for Xander kind of pining after Willow or being overly concerned about her in this moment in front of Cordelia, then I feel like she wouldn't be getting her dose too.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of serves both people in the situation. And I think that is the point of it, for us to see that, like, there you go, Xander. Now you know how it feels. And simultaneously, we're like,
Cordelia.
There you go, Cordy. You
Yeah.
know how it feels.
Yeah,
So.
I was just about to say it's good to see that, like, Cordelia, like, I don't want to say this, like, Cordelia herself could initiate, like, she's voicing this stuff and calling him out for it, but she's not pressing the issue at all. She's just kind of like whatever about it, and that's her own fault for not speaking up for herself. As mad as I am as a Cordy defender in those little ways that I've mentioned, she's not doing anything to make her situation better. She's not over here being like, listen, look at me in my eyes right now, you little boy. Stop talking about your friends and look at me. I'm your girlfriend. If not, we're gonna break up, and I'm not gonna fucking deal with your shit. But she's not doing that. So she's bringing this energy and inviting it in regularly because she's letting it just pass up.
I will say that I like the way that she's handling it and speaking on it versus Xander trying to, like, I don't know, he, like, directs his aggression over it in the wrong area. Like just now when he's in the gym with him and he's, like, lunging toward Willow to break them up physically from him tucking her tag in her shirt. It's kind of like at least Cordelia is addressing the person that is causing her the irritation and the insecurity, which is Xander, whereas Xander's, like, making sure the whole world knows about the fact that his guards are up or his flags are up or whatever about Oz, and then no one knows if that's even sincere, because we're like, well, are you concerned about Oz because you're concerned about Oz, or are you concerned about Oz because you're jealous?
Jealousy.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's get back in class. The teacher pairs people up, and on the way over to their group, Xander notices Larry has a bandage on his arm, him informing some stray dog bit him last week, and it ties in with, like, Giles' comments on there's been other attacks in the papers about dogs, wild dogs out there. Then Oz mentions to Larry that he knows the feeling because his nephew bites whenever he's being tickled. And I thought it was interesting because you get a red herring on Larry right here, a red layering, if you will, aka the red hairs on layers. Okay, I'm done. But we get him as, like, a red herring. So we're like, because he's got this bandage on his arm, it helps to, like, add the pieces later. The fact that Xander's on his trail and stuff. Be still Larry shorts, though, he says to his student partner, Teresa, that he walks up to. And we meet Teresa also here as well. Larry saying he's going to have to attack her, and her clarifying that it's not just them in the group. And then in-scene transition magic, because Buffy pops into the frame and she's like, I'm in your group too. Yes, Buffy protecting Teresa at all costs, except for later, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Larry's grin lowers too. He's like, fuck. Because he sees Buffy and he's like, oh, I already know you can jack my shit up. Like, I remember the Halloween episode when you pressed me up against the damn Coke machine. Ooh, diet. Buffy is pulled aside by Willow, who reminds Buffy that she's supposed to be a meek little girly girl like the rest of them. She's like, don't draw attention to yourself. People are going to be like, what the fuck? Buffy's like, what a way to spoil my fun. And then the teacher instructs them on what to do when you're attacked from behind, using leverage of your attacker to flip them over. You all know how that's done. If you've watched Miss Congeniality, you definitely know. Buffy getting it in that bent over stance, or Buffy's getting it. Buffy's getting in. Buffy's over here twerking. Buffy getting in that bent over stance with Larry straddling her backside as the teacher's, like, divvying out how to do this, and her playing like she's weak as fuck, moaning out. That, like, it's so awkward because she's like,
I know.
Oh, Summers, you are turning me on.
But Willow's over there, like, visually looking at Buffy too. Like, she's like, yeah, that's it. Do that. That's perfect. And Buffy does it a second time. And Larry's like, oh, Summers, you're turning me on, and grabs her ass cheek. Then Buffy's like, fuck this, and flips him over with, like, no trouble at all. And then Willow just looks over and she's like, bitch. Like, she just has that frumpy face, kind of like the same face she did for Buffy whenever they were in the Halloween episode, which is kind of funny because that was Larry in that episode too. Whenever they're trying to sneak in the library and steal the book on like Angel's past and like other people, like the Watcher Diaries or whatever. And she's in the window. She's like looking at, or whenever she's like, Miss Calendar said you were a babe, and she just stops and she's like, bitch. Like, it's the same energy. And then Oz, I like him too because he's like,
that works too.
I love this moment just for Willow being like, bro, people can't know that you're like an all-powerful warrior, so remember to dial it back a little bit. Larry totally deserves this treatment for what we've seen displayed, and also the bullshit that, like, it's almost like Buffy, you know, remember Xander in the Halloween episode also, he's like, punching that pirate out kind of gave me a weird sense of closure, and this is kind of like the closure from Buffy, like getting to flip his ass on his literal ass, you know, whenever she was turned into Little Miss 1775. Anyways, later in the library, we see Giles presenting explanations of the moon to the gang about how they affect us on Earth, especially bringing out the worst qualities. Giles actually laughing too at Xander's joke about moon pies. He's like, oh, moon pies, haha, I love those.
And yet, ironically, led to the invention of the moon pie.
Oh. The moon pie. You see,
I had one of those for the first time back a couple of months ago, and I got like the chocolate covered ones, and I've never had one of these before. It was like okay, but I would never eat one again.
But it was okay, but you would never eat it again.
Like, I would never go buy them at the store and get a whole box of them. Giles clarifies the werewolf does in fact emerge for 3 consistent nights, being the full moon and the 2 nights surrounding it, adding they act on its impulses and aggressions, aka your typical male, calls out Buffy. Which on behalf of their gender, Xander, of course, takes offense. Giles agreeing, though, that they shouldn't jump to conclusions. Buffy adding one of my favorite quotes of all time.
I didn't jump. I took a tiny step, and their conclusions were
Facts. And I've heard it in other podcasts, and people get really confused about why the werewolf comes for 3 nights, because you would just think it would be the initial night of the full moon, like when it's at 100% potency. But like in practice of magic, just for anybody listening, like usually if you're going to do a magical working, the moon is gaining its intensity and waning off of its intensity for a full moon cycle, usually the couple of days leading up to the full moon and the couple of days after. So like if something causes you to not be able to do your full moon ritual, you could always do it the night before or the morning after, or even sometimes into the next day, and the energy is still very much within the same auric field that it was. You didn't really miss your opportune window. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. People, I've just kind of questioned this in the past, and I've heard it like asked as a question, and I always wish I could come through the mic and be like, this is actually why, like, because there's so much, like, obviously there's more witchcraft that gets presented on Buffy at some point. I'm not going to really spoil anything, but it's a show that's about the supernatural, and elements of witchcraft have always been in there, and still to this day, like Giles with the Igon stuff and all that, magic is going to come up because it's part of the supernatural realm. So to say that way, like, whenever I would hear people along the series talk about witchcraft, I would always want to once again jump through the mic and be like, oh, this is why. Oh, this is why. So this is my chance to go through, and hopefully maybe they'll come back and listen to it. They won't. But you know what I'm saying? For anybody else that's left confused by misinformation, because sometimes there's misinformation that's been on these podcasts too. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know shit for shit what you're talking about. Thankfully, Buffering one time had like an actual witch come on the podcast and talk about some of the stuff they wanted to talk about. So that was kind of cool.
But that's interesting.
Just saying, that's why I went on a tangent.
Well, no, that's important too, because then it also says that you notice that in the background someone did their research, because there's elements that only you would know unfolding if you knew about magic truly, and then it would make sense to you, you know. So it's almost like your own way of making sense of the show, where to other people it probably feels like there's pieces missing, or they're making up their own elaborate tale like behind it or whatever, you know. Yeah, so that makes sense.
They're doing a play on something that's literal, so that's cool.
Yeah, it's no different than every time like something German comes up and you be texting me and be like, Courtney, what does this mean?
For real though, what's that?
And I'm like, that's me wanting to come through the mic and be like, no, this is what that means.
Which I've done. The point, though, Giles is making is that this wolf could be a woman as well as a man. Anyone can be a werewolf if they're bitten by one. Xander asking if it's cliche that the silver bullets will be what they are needing this week. Giles claiming no, that's not their route, as this is still a human that they're dealing with who deserves their life, especially if they are unaware of their situation and their actions. Buffy adding then tonight they bring them back alive, which I like their stance initially on it. They're like, no, this is a person. We need to try to figure out who they are. We don't want them to just be like out here, you know, getting murked up or out here killing people and stuff too. Let's try to figure out how we can aid and help them. versus Kane's method of I'm just going to kill them when they're in their fucking phase. So we fade into the full moon gleaming in the sky. Buffy and Giles patrol around Lover's Lane, where a bunch of people are parked in cars making out. Giles wondering if she found anything whenever Buffy comes back up to him. And I like, it's like werewolf-like, not boy cheating on a girl with another girl type shit. That's what I wrote my notes to dumb it down. But I love that interaction. She's like, oh my God, such and such is dating and making out with this person, and such knew that. And she's like, oh, you didn't mean like any of that. And she's like, I can't gossip with you, Giles. That was a cute little interaction. But she does let him know that she had no such luck on werewolf sightings. And Giles, too, is like, maybe we should knock on windows and see if anyone's seen anything. And Buffy clarifies, she's like, there's no chance anyone's seen anything tonight, Giles, except for like their partner's lips, you know? Like, what? Everyone's eyes are closed while they're making out, so they're not seeing shit. And like, Giles is so awkward in this moment, too, because he's like, oh, yeah, you're probably right. Buffy moves through the trees to search around and then gets caught in that huge ass trap net that hoists her up in the air. A man running out with a gun too to claim that he's got his prize. Noticing that it's just Buffy in the net though, her calling out for Giles when this damn man just points the gun at Giles, rolling the fuck up. And I'm like, what the hell is happening right here? Like, I would call the cops so quick. We're all out in public where teenagers are frequenting in this part, and this man's just out here willy-nilly with a fucking gun aiming it at different people. What if it was just a guy that got out of his car to go take a piss real quick, and he's out here like, hey, what are you doing? Like, you a werewolf? I'm gonna shoot you. Like, what?
I know.
No siree.
Especially, I'm like, where did you put your net? Because like, you could have just nabbed up anything. You could have nabbed up a deer, a possum, a raccoon, a vampire, a Buffy, like anybody.
The vampire's like, hey dude, can you cut me down? And then he kills him afterwards. That would have been how I'd like the scene to play out.
He could have nabbed up Miss French. She could have nabbed Luke. Like
French
anybody.
Is dead, Courtney.
You don't know.
I do know she got chopped up by Buffy by a machete.
There's
what
others.
Are you talking about?
You know that there's other human-sized praying mantises out there.
But like I told you in spoiler section at the end of that episode, we don't ever see anything come of that. So
we just like to mention her.
You love her. You need to get a Miss French tattoo. That's going to be our matching best friend tattoos. We're going to get praying mantis faces.
Listen, can we get the one I put on your little plaque of her with the glasses?
Yeah, we should. We should do something like that and then have a French statement written above it. Something very interesting. We'll get the word machete in French.
Yes, exactly.
Giles questions. Moving along, Giles questions who the guy is, and he introduces himself as Kane, aka the guy with the gun who is going to conduct any interview questions. Buffy calling out his chummy ass to get her out of the net, which he just then cuts and drops as she falls pretty hard too. I'm like, thankfully she's a slayer and can withstand that 25 feet in the air. And now you just drop this bitch
I'm
down
like,
the ground.
I know he's not just going to take that knife and cut that rope.
All you have to do is like take the rope slack out and like sift it out slowly to lower the damn net. He go over there and cut his own damn rope. Like, you know, that rope cost him a lot at the damn like whatever. What's a store that like outdoor product Bass Pro Shops rope? Like he got her with, you know what I mean?
I'm just sitting here about to say Ace Hardware.
I mean,
and you're like Bass Pro Shops.
There's rope there too. I just couldn't think of it because I don't shop at those stores. I can't tell you how many times I've not.
They probably sell rope at Walmart.
Okay, well, Walmart then. Fuck. An outdoor supply store where you get hunting and outdoor gear for camping and doing things that tie people up, you know?
REI.
Which is probably where you got the net to, but Bass Pro Shops. Kane being a sicko though and commenting on Giles being out there with this young Buffy, and Giles is not liking his comments too, which I did not like either, and he calls out, he's like, it'd be wise of you to take that back. And you can like see that Ripper kind of come out for a second because he just like goes cold face, and then he eggs Giles some more on about it too, and I was like, you really about to see Ripper. But Buffy stops Giles whenever he starts to like go forward, telling Kane it's not what his disgusting mind is thinking. They are out here looking for werewolves, and like, Buffy just out here talking about, we're out here looking for werewolves. Like, what? This is what we're doing now? Buffy, next time you see a person, you'd be like, oh, I'm out here on patrol for vampires. Kendra would be pissed off right now. I'm just saying.
Did anyone explain to you what secret identity means?
But Kane finds this very funny because he looks at them and he's like, you're just a girl. And Giles looks like he's auditioning to be a librarian.
That made me die.
That shit was so funny because that's exactly what he just called out Giles as. That's exactly what he is. I do like how Giles assures him, though, in that moment, because he's like, oh, I assure you, she's quite capable. They speak on the fact that Cain has killed 11 previous werewolves, not giving a fuck about the fact that they are humans. He just wants their fur for money. That's why he hunts them during the full moon cycles. He also informs that the werewolves are attracted to sexual heat, sensing it miles away, wondering what other spots in town are like Lover's Lane that he can go check them out for. Buffy plays clueless and he leaves them. The moment when she plays kind of clueless, she's obviously doing it because she tells Giles a second later, like, I know the next place we can actually go look. But he doubles back on her after she says that. She's like, I don't know. And he's like, of course you don't, because you're a stupid fucking girl. Like, the misogyny in his comments,
Yes.
like, I'm just like, boy. I do have to say that's actually pretty shitty for the 11 people, though, that Cain's already killed. Like, they couldn't help that they were werewolves. Just like I was saying, I was awarding Buffy and Giles for taking the stance that they have this episode to protect the werewolf because of the fact that they have a human life. They are deserving of it. But also, we know the lore of a werewolf and know that that's a person the rest of the month. So you can contain them. You can find an alternate route on like what to do.
It's not like
versus kill them.
The ratio of time that they're a werewolf compared to the time that they're a human also is like, what the fuck are you doing?
Exactly.
Especially because that's how he justifies it. You know, he's like, well, that's why I only hunt them the 3. And I'm like, the fuck?
You're still killing somebody. But like,
that's less of a reason, not more of one.
It sucks too because his ass isn't just trying to kill them to get them off the street so that way they're not hurting people. He's doing it so that way he can take them to South Africa or wherever he said and sell their pelt. Like, what?
It's strictly for the money and for profit. Yeah,
exactly.
Which makes it like less even reasonable for me. But
which helps fuel his misogyny and the patriarchy vibes that he gives off. So there we are.
Trump, MAGA.
Yes, my favorite on opposite day forever. We flash over to our next scene where Teresa is walking home alone and hearing noises behind her, getting totally spooked. And we're all like, oh, fuck, the werewolf is going to get her. Were you thinking the werewolf was like behind her?
100%.
Something definitely is, because the camera's behind her and it's showing that point of view shot from the camera being the person watching them. And as soon as she turns around to tail off running, she runs right into Angelus. And then we're like, oh, fuck. She tells him that she feels the stalked energy of flowing, and he agrees being out alone at night is spooky. And she's a bit wigged, but he mentions her going to school with Buffy too in this moment. He's like, hey, don't you go to school with Buffy? And she's like, oh my God, this is great. Like somebody that like I can like feel safe with. She warms right up to trust him because of this statement as well. And he offers to walk her home as they walk off together. And I'm like, well, that's the last time we see a Teresa this episode. And a live Teresa this episode.
Yes. I was going to say, not the very last time.
What did you think of like the little reveal of Angelus being tucked into this like moment?
Well, as I said, I was glad that they did it so I could remember that he existed, because up until now I had forgotten. But I will say the first thing I wrote in my notes as soon as he popped on the screen is how much I hated him, because the vibe of the savage, soulless, douchey guy that he portrays, not even by acting it out, by just his soul energy of standing there, it was like so icky already, you know. And it still shocks me how great of an actor he is, because we've seen this like really like a most borderline shy, timid, sweet angel, and
he
now
plays on that here too still.
Yeah, and now it's like he's the most ridiculous, savage, douchebag angel, you know. And I'm just like, oh my God, no. Instantly for her, I was like, run away.
For real though.
And of course now he's like using Buffy, so it's not even like here's a message for Buffy, but it's like he's using Buffy to lure people in, which makes it more fucked up. And I'm just like, you couldn't be more fucked up of a person, I will say that, or a non-person.
I want to know how he knew that she went to school with Buffy though, because we didn't even know until this episode that Teresa went to school at Sunnydale.
Because there's only one fucking school there, Brandon, and she's carrying a backpack, and she's dumb enough to walk home in the middle of the night like most people that live there. Put 2 and 2 together.
Courtney's conspiracies.
That's not even conspiracy. That's real life facts. Would you be walking around there from home from anywhere in the middle of the night, even as not a female, when you know vampires, whatever the fuck else, a dead body pop up at your school every damn week, Joyce out here selling brownies on every block? Like, would you be out in the middle of the night? No.
Yeah, because I'm trying to get them brownies from Joyce.
You're like, in fact, I was out for meeting Joyce.
She only sells them from 4 to 6 while it's still daylight.
You're right.
Okay, well.
She remembers Darla and inviting her inside for the big meal.
This next moment I love so much. I had forgotten about the scene, and it's rather important. It's rather important, Courtney. At the Bronze, aka sexual heat spot number 2, we see hormonal teens like we've never seen them before, truly making out and shit all everywhere. Like the Bronze, we have never seen it portrayed this way. It's just like, gas
I think
the
they
fuck
gave
up.
everyone ecstasy on the way in.
They
like,
did.
What's going
𝒠𝒦𝘠. Everybody's on the 𝒠𝒦𝘠.
Everyone had tits, cookies.
She's beg to differ. And then we move over to Cordy bitching to Willow about literally how Xander always talks about Willow and Buffy and how she doesn't feel seen. Willow totally understands, and in this dialogue, the show is so aware of itself because Willow calls out his "do I smell something" look, like, and Cordy calls it a part of his little guy games and his flippy floppy ass nature. Willow's smart too, saying he's so busy looking around at what he doesn't have that he doesn't notice what he does have, with basically the whole thing we've been talking about this whole episode. Cordy pointing out that he should realize that she is with Oz, Willow claiming that her relationship isn't really moving along either, though, and Cordy agreeing that guys are just blech. I'm not even going to go on the tangent about Xander because I'm going to leave that on the back burner now since we're like whatever about him. I like the fact that Willow and Cordy are seen here talking in this moment, in this scene, because we would have been led to think that Willow would be avoiding Cordelia, especially one-on-one, because of the fact that, like, what she called her earlier, whenever she's like 1-800, I'm dating a skanky whore, or whatever the fuck she said. And also because of, like, innocence and what happened last episode, because she's hurt kind of like by the fact of Cordelia, even if it's not Cordelia's fault. You would think she might be a little bit more standoffish around Cordelia, but they're actually pairing up and, like, talking about this. And I think this is a healthy dynamic that we needed to see on the show, and especially coming from these two, because we've only ever seen Willow and her hang out, like we mentioned a couple episodes ago, whenever she needs something from Willow. And now she's hanging out with Willow at the Bronze, sitting down, just sharing space with her. And I really like that. That's really fucking cool. Willow was an exceptional person for moving past all the stuff with Cordelia and refocusing on herself and Oz more than anything versus worrying about Xander this episode. You know, Xander's worrying about everybody else. And all the stuff that she says about Oz in this scene isn't really rooted in anything, because she's just assumpting this whole episode that he's like leading her on, or he's just not wanting to take an extra step, not wanting to kiss her like he didn't want to do episode, when he's in actuality a stand-up guy. As the audience is getting to see, we can see that behind the screens because we know what's going on with him, you know, but Willow can't see that. So she's over here like stressing about stuff that's just not real. It's kind of like just her anxiety and worries. It's kind of like when a guy doesn't text you back or something and you're like freaking out, wondering like, what is he doing? What is he out there like, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, bitch, he's just living life. Like, he's doing him. Like, let him come to you like whenever he's ready to talk to you. That's the same way I am with everybody else that I talk to, you know?
Yeah, I think, you know, when we're younger, it's so much different, especially when you're exploring for the first time, those like feelings, and you really want that reciprocated attention from the person, especially if you in the female's position are like, I don't want to make the first move because that's not normally like how this goes. Like, normally the dude's like ready to go, you know? So you're just like, I'm game. And so it's weird to be in a opposing situation where the guy's more reluctant or hesitant or hasn't made that kind of advance towards you, especially if they're interested. So I get it. Stemming insecurity, I think it goes back, it's just interesting. It always goes back to how like this show displays how behind the scenes the weird and supernatural element of the show going on in the background can make people feel feelings that are relatable to everybody else, you know? And I think that's what I appreciated about the moment is, like you said, from Willow's standpoint, she's like, well, is he into me or is he not? Because he's one way one day and then the next way the next day. And from our perspective, we're like, he's literally trying to protect you.
Yeah, he's
like,
going
right
through
now.
some shit. Like...
Yeah, and he's trying to figure his shit out before he really, like, you know, exposes what that is, or before he lets you in on something he's not even aware of, like whatever it is. He just doesn't know how to convey that. And like you said, like you would these days, you would have no problems being like, hey, this is what's going on. I'm just going through some shit. Like, I'll talk to you later, rest your case. Or if you're in the receiving end, you're like, all right, I'm just going to give them their space, let them be, and I'll hear from them when I hear from them. But when you're 16 and 17 years old, you're like, but what's wrong with me? And what did I do wrong?
Yeah, that's
and
anxiety.
Why don't they like me like I like them? You know, so that's Willow's case. And poor Oz is just like, I think I'm turning into a werewolf.
He's going through some changes.
He's like, I got bit by my nephew and now I don't know what happened. Or whatever.
Valid points. In that last statement about Oz and Xander that Cordy makes, the werewolf drops down from the ceiling in front of them. Like this, I don't know where he came from. I guess he hopped down where Buffy hopped down from whenever she was about to kill Luke and stuff on the pool table. They moved the pool table this episode. And chaos ensues as everyone flees, including them. Giles and Buffy arrive in the nick of time to Willow telling Buffy it's inside the bronze. And I don't know who does it, but that door just slams behind Buffy shut whenever like everybody finishes paling out.
I know.
And she's just left alone in there. I was like, they just locked this little girl up in here with a monster.
Listen, in my notes, I literally have, but why did they shut Buffy in there like that? Like, damn, at least leave the door open for a bitch. No one can hold the door open.
Never
What if
noticed
she
it
needs to
before.
make a quick escape like y'all did? Fuck.
For real. I mean, they don't know that she's the Slayer. I mean, Giles and Willow does. I wonder if it was one
They
of them
acting
two
like
that
it.
shut the door on her. They were like, oh, Buffy's in there. She'll take care of this. Like, let's guard it now.
You brought up a good point, though, because I'm like, here Willow is in gym class worried about Buffy blowing her cover just because she flips a dude over her back, and then y'all are going to full force shut her in the bronze with a werewolf, and that's not obvious?
Oh, this show.
Like, either that looks like you're sacrificing your friend and y'all got in a fight and you don't give a fuck about her all of a sudden, so you just fed her to the wolf, or you know something no one else knows.
Oh my gosh, this show. Well, Buffy does come in contact with the werewolf, but it kind of overpowers her and she doesn't catch it, and it flees the scene through the window. It looks goofy as fuck when it hops through the window. I'm just gonna say, I can tell that was sugar glass. Later, we see Kane has arrived and is snarking at Buffy about letting it get away, her informing that she wanted to catch it to lock it up, and him claiming she doesn't need to do a man's job. Enter misogyny again. Giles smarting off to inform him that this girl surely found and took on the werewolf that he hasn't even been able to find. Kane tries to make them feel like shit and it could go out there and hurt someone, and that would be on their heads if so, since it escaped. And then he leaves, Giles calling him a pillock, and then this time, because it's been a long time since you left me. No, I'm just kidding. We get vocabulary lessons with Giles. Pillock is a British derogatory term for someone who is stupid or annoying. So the more you know. You're welcome, everyone. And that's been your vocabulary lessons with Giles. Giles and her leave as we catch the wolf in an alley, following the delicious smell of blood, following its trail all the way to Angelus, dropping Teresa's dead body he's just fed on, the two having a brief standoff as well, Angelus backing away because he's obviously very smart. He's like, this thing could eat my head off and make me turn to ashes, so I'm gonna whatever. But it was very interesting to see, because normally, like, you know, the movie Underworld or like Van Helsing, we see the werewolf and the vampire mysticism clash, and this was kind of like their little play on that really quick to say, like, let's have the vampire interact with a werewolf and let's let it be Angelus. That was really, really cool to see. Back in the woods, Buffy and Giles are back on the hunt, taking a break in his car before it's nearly light out, hearing on the radio about the death of Teresa, her body having been found that night, something it was the werewolf, and they will continue the hunt the next night. Since it's almost daylight, the werewolf won't be a wolf much longer. And that scene was cute too, because Giles is like falling asleep in the car, and Buffy's like, Giles, and he's like, you don't usually
Poor
see
Giles
Giles
was trying to take a nap.
literally. And then we get some little cutscene transition magic here as the dawn starts to rise, the sun is coming up, and we find the wolf laying in the middle of the woods before it mutates back into its human form, shifting as we get revealed to us that this is a naked Oz who just wakes up and says, huh. What are your thoughts on this? Did you see this coming? I have a feeling maybe you were like starting to breadcrumb yourself.
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely did. And I even wrote that in my notes. I was like, I fucking knew it. Especially when the theme of werewolves opened up in the beginning of this episode. I was like, I just got a feeling like Oz is going to be the werewolf. And
Yeah.
so when that was revealed, I was really happy that I was right, but also immediate worry started to set in for Willow, because I'm like, poor Willow. This bitch can never get a break. Like, first she's after Xander, who don't want to give her the time of day. And then the one dude she does get time of day from has now suddenly turned into a werewolf unexpectedly to us all. So, like...
Well,
wasn't in the cards, but it happened anyway.
It was in Drusilla's tarot cards, though.
You're right, since they're fake anyway.
Yeah, for real. Just like her.
Just like her podcast name.
Anyways. We flash over to Oz's house where we see him on the phone with his aunt, who is calling about his nephew, and her obviously having like conversation with him on the opposite line of the phone that we can't hear. But in the conversation, he gets asked by his aunt because he replies like, "Oh, my finger's doing great. That's actually why I'm calling." She's like, "How's your finger since my son tried to eat that shit off of there?" And just blatantly asking also if little Jordy is a werewolf. And he's certainly is, because even though we can't hear her into the conversation, like I said, Oz is just like, "Oh."
And how long has that been going on?
Claiming he just wanted to know for no reason before hanging up. Looking a bit weird. And this is so funny to me because usually in werewolf lore, they end up biting during an attack, or you get scratched by the werewolf or something like that happens. And Oz is over here just being Oz. Of all people for it to happen to him, it's literally caused by the bite of a child. Like, Oz wasn't attacked by some werewolf or anything like that. He was just playing around tickling his nephew, and like he bites when he's being tickled. And he says, "How long has this been going on?" So like, is this little fucker, like, I don't know how old little Jordy is, but I'm gonna assume in my head safely he's probably around like somewhere between 6 and 8. And whenever he woofs out every month, he's like a little 3-foot fucking werewolf running around. So are they just putting like him in the dog kennel? Or like, what? I want to know what's happening with little
I'm like,
Jordy.
I need the other end of the conversation, because he was like, "How long has this been going on?" I'm like, "How long has what been going on? And for how long?" Because if these people are just cash, like you said, locking their like 6, 7, 8-year-old up in a fucking cage 3 days out of the month and being like, "No big deal, we won't call a doctor." Like, what the fuck?
I don't know if the doctor can help with that.
Or if they're just like chill, they're like, "We'll have to tell no one, and you're gonna have to skip school 3 days a week out of the month because no going to school for werewolves."
This being the Hellmouth, though, like, I'm sure once they go to the doctor for this issue, they're going to be like, "Oh, I know someone who knows someone." You know, there's got to be the grapevine, like, of people to figure it out. They're
Especially there.
Yes. Cutting over to the school where we see Oz walking down the halls after getting off the phone with his aunt, and he's channeling what I called that Buffy on edge energy from What's My Line, because he's like nervous around looking at everybody. He's like, "Everybody's gonna know I'm a werewolf," whatever. He arrives in the library as the gang's in there discussing how the wolf got away and how Kane was right that they should have killed it, thinking that it killed Teresa, and them informing Oz as such because he was worried if anyone got bit or scratched. And they just discuss how there's no way to tell who it was, Xander claiming Giles is on research trail and how he is practically an expert on the subject on account of how he was a hyena, adds Willow. And then the fourth time this episode, Xander is irritating me because he says that he knows what it's like to crave meat, to be taken over by these uncontrollable urges. And then Buffy calls him out to say, "I thought you said you didn't remember anything about that."
Mm-hmm.
Him awkwardly laughing because he's fucking caught and got himself tangled up in a lie now. You see Giles' face too, the way he just looks out of the fucking cage that he's in. He's like, I don't know if you really paid attention, but Giles literally looks out.
Giles was like, "How are you gonna walk that one back, Xander?" Like,
exactly. And we'll talk about it in a second, but he deters the convo to say that the point is that he can get inside this animal's head, acting out the scenario, which is so awkward because he's like, "I'm sniffing, I'm snarling." You know what I mean? "I'm looking for my next meal." And then he like arrives. He's like, "I know who it is. It's right in front of us." And it's cute the way they played out because Oz is literally standing in front of him and Oz is terrified. He's like, "Oh my God, they figured it out. They know it's me because we know it's Oz, but they don't know." And then Xander's like, "It's Larry," bringing up his wound and obviously gross displays that he's enacted the whole episode. And Oz is like, phew, like visibly, like you can see him take a big ass deep breath. And he's like, "I'm so pleased with this decision." He's like, "You're right, it's Larry. Go get him." Xander's going to go talk to him and force out a confession. Giles instructs Willow to check student files to see if anyone else fits the description and for Buffy to come with him to speak on an alternative option. Willow, left alone with Oz, tries to get him to help her with the research, but he can't for reasons we know why, but Willow doesn't. That causes her to think that he's blowing her off, because he claims that he's busy, and then he leaves suddenly, not helping her with this stance on everything else she's been like having anxiety about this episode, because now she's really probably reeling even worse than we were just like at when we were discussing it a few moments ago. It's like increasing, and it just keeps building until obviously she goes to the house and she's like, "No, you're gonna fucking talk to me." And then Buffy obviously had to witness this interaction from Giles' office as well, and she's like feeling bad for her friend, but she's got other stuff on her mind to be worried about right now. Just to touch basis on the Xander moment, like, he gets away with this accidental outburst, and it always drives me crazy. It drives every Buffy fan crazy because it gets brought up and put right in front of your face. and Buffy doesn't take the moment to actually like call him out on it. I like the fact that he gets basically soured here, but like once again, Xander faces no repercussions of his actions, and that's like another additive of driving me crazy, because as we know of the events of the pack, he isn't still taking any accountability like he wouldn't at the end of the episode. This could have all been cleared up still back then, when he could have just been like, oh, I actually do remember what I did, and I'm really sorry, and thank you for hitting me with that desk and stopping me. Like, I appreciate that. But from our perspective, obviously, it's just the fact of what we get with Xander, like you were saying earlier. Nobody's going to press the issue with him, but in real life, if this was the case and it came up out in this way, I wouldn't have been able to just be nonchalant about it. I would have looked at him and been so like, we got to have a discussion about this. And Giles would have been like, oh, we got to worry about the werewolf. I said, actually, we got to worry about Xander right in a second. Like, or I would have remembered. I would have been like, you know what, you're right. We can set this aside for a few months. We can go take care of this werewolf.
You're like, I'm going to set a reminder on my phone to go off in about 8 hours from now so we don't forget.
Yep. But I don't know. It's just like, to me, it just shows like, it sucks because the way you put it out there is like kind of the way it is for right now. Xander just has an ability to grow up, and we just have to face it. This is just who Xander is. This is the Xander that we get. And it's unfortunate, but it's just the fucking fact.
Yeah, I agree. That part was annoying to me too, that there was no like evolution in that conversation when it was just so blatantly put in all of our faces. And I'm like, how can you not take that and run with it? Like, someone in the room, you know, because it wasn't just Buffy, even though that's who he was kind of more directly talking to. But like at this point, even if I was Giles, I would have been like, you know what, you're gonna blow your own cover, I'm gonna do it with you.
I'm surprised Giles didn't look out and be like, ooh, great. He was already being a nosy person, because he'd like popped his head out to like really be there for the conversation in case it happened. But if I would have been Giles, I would have been like, yeah, Xander, didn't you say that? Either way, let's go follow Xander over to the men's locker room, where we see Larry get spooked by Xander. Larry being like, bro, wear a bell. And him calling Larry out on being jumpy, and how he feels like it's because Larry is hiding something. And Larry wants to hide his fist in Xander's face. I'd personally love to see that this episode, but whatever. Xander claims to know Larry's secret. And I love the dialogue, the exchange between them two as this builds up, because Larry claims Xander is nosy as fuck, and that's going to get him into trouble someday, aka today, as he grabs Xander by the shirt. And Xander being like, hurting me isn't going to help. People will still find out. And Larry realizes like he has some leverage on him, so he lets him go. And he's like, what do you want, hush money or something? And Xander claims that he just wants to help, and he starts the slew of his misinformation. And Larry's like, what do you think, that you have a cure or something? And Xander tells him he knows what he's going through because he's been there. He knows that talking about it is best. Easy for Xander to say, he's a nobody. Larry has a reputation. Xander is like, come on, before someone gets hurt. And Larry questions,
This gets out, it's over for me. I mean, forget about playing football. They'll run me out of this town. I mean, come on. How are people going to look at me after they find out I'm gay?
Xander slowly looks up to him too, because Xander was looking down, and he's like, what the fuck did I just hear? Larry is excited because saying this felt good, then just says a bunch of times he's gay, and Xander is like really uncomfortable, and then Larry is like saying it over and over again. Xander's like, you can stop saying that now. I'm like, oh no. And then he like goes on to be like, but knowing you went through the same thing has made it so much easier for me. Xander is hella trying to reel back. He's like, Larry, hold on. And he's like, no, I get it. I was mean to you, but I guess it's because I could see that reflection of myself in you. And Xander's trying to be like, I'm not gay, but Larry will not let him get the words out. And he's just like, dude, I'll keep your secret, and pats him and walks off. And he feels mightily good about himself too, because he just puts the little towel over his shoulder and just like, he's like, yeah. He's like, this is great. It's funny as fuck. Because Xander just keeps on looking petrified as he walks off. And I love it, because this is the first gay character that we've seen on the show. Buffy is beyond its time for doing this and putting this representation out here for the queer community, especially in the realm of 1998 when the show was airing. I also like a little bit of this scene too, where we get the payback for the bullshit that Xander's been portraying. He's getting the bullshit from Cordelia. He's getting this shit from Larry now, because now as their school years go on, Larry's going to be thinking that Xander's also a closeted gay guy, but he's not interested in Xander sexually. He just sees a like-minded friend in him. So it's really funny. But getting back on it, I like that we have a queer character on the show. Like I said, the first one on Buffy for that. Looking back on it, you can see how Larry's actions so far in the show have just been like a smokescreen for who he really is, because he totally could have just been like your average male, because most of them obviously are being fueled by their hormonal urges and like their dumbheaded fuck like jock bully energies that we typically see portrayed in media, them ogling women and being sexually explicit, aka sexual harassment charges need to be filed. But like that's how they act typically in movies. We've seen it in everything. But it was literally just him trying to do the cover-up story and stay hidden, which is literally something a lot of closeted gay men actually do. So I love it. And as a queer person, I'm happy we got this from this scene and the representation, because I'm certain that this helped a lot of the queer community back then. What did you think of the reveal of Larry being gay?
I actually didn't realize that that was the first queer character on the show. So I'm glad that you pointed that out, because for back then, it is such a time where I think that was probably a risky move for the show to make, to embrace that, so openly, especially, and then to encourage it in a way to like be open and come out of the closet, because that was like the opposite of the message that I think we were even feeling coming out like way later in time in life,
Mm-hmm.
So I can't even imagine how truly suppressing and suffocating it was back then in the later 90s. But yeah, I mean, it was cool. It was really cool to see. And it was the least suspecting character, I think, for me, that I would have pictured to be gay or queer on the show, of course, and I think that is such a kind of good point to ponder, because you do see that oftentimes, that the people who act most hateful and most negatively toward the queer community end up later in life being queer themselves. I've seen that happen a lot. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's no different than the psychology of when you're a kid, I guess, and you're like, you're like fighting with the one person you have a crush on, like gay or not, that's the stigma and that's your psychology, and it's kind of like that. So it's really interesting that they kind of had that as the backstory to it. It wasn't just like this queer character that came into play. It was this character that we're used to seeing in this really harsh, like you said, jockey, masculine, like toxic kind of vibe, and then here he is and he has that one conversation, and you can see that his whole character changes after that, which is also really, really cool.
Exactly. Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too. I do want to mention, like, I've like kind of two fun facts. Larry that plays Larry, because remember his name is in real life is Larry as well. He was on an interview with All Bronze No Brains. Tony did an interview with him back a few weeks ago when they were covering this episode, and along the course of the interview, he revealed that he got brought back on the show because Joss called him and was like, hey, I'm going to write this like character that we might have to get somebody else for, but if you're comfortable with play it, we'd like to bring you back, because he was supposed to just be a one-up character on the show, the Halloween episode, and just be like a guest starring role. But they decided, like, let's do more with Larry and bring him back a little bit. So he said, if you're comfortable with doing this and playing a gay character, then we would like to bring you on, because they knew on set, like, Larry had already been vocal about the fact that he had grew up Mormon and he was definitely religious, like believed in Christ and stuff like that. So that was really, really interesting that he came back and was like comfortable enough to play as a Christian man at that a gay character as one of his first few roles, because Buffy's one of his first gigs after like Hocus Pocus, obviously, and stuff like that as well. I actually have like some little quotes from Larry in the interview that Tony did with him. He said that he got a lot of good feedback over the years from the community at like Comic-Cons and such, where people have confirmed what I said moments ago about helping them to deal with their internal struggles over their sexuality, or later come out and just to overall accept parts of themselves. Because at the time, 1998, it wasn't something that was generally encouraged to be speaking about or just like living that lifestyle. It was very much like don't ask, don't tell still. It was the hush hush policy, all of that. And he says he appreciates how it was taken and how his role left a good impression and helped people. It made him feel really good that he helped to impact people and change their lives for the better and make them more comfortable within themselves. And he also mentioned how it was cool that the jock that was represented as the gay man on the show wasn't just the stereotypical attributes of like the queer person that you usually see. That's what Tony said anyways. He was like, you usually would like be able to just like call out the gay person that's in the room versus like where they did the jock version. You can't really tell it's an unsuspecting gay man, you know, because of that, which we kind of touched base on. But I thought that was cool that he got an interview with him.
Yeah.
Back in the library, Buffy asked Willow if anyone else has popped up from her research. I laugh out loud because Willow's like,
there is one name that keeps getting spit out. Aggressive behavior, run-ins with authorities, about a screen full of violent incidents.
Okay, most of those were not my fault. Somebody else started them. I was just standing up for myself.
They say it's a good idea to count to 10 when you're angry.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, keep looking.
She's like fights, troubles, bad occurrences, all the things that she states out, aka Buffy. And the exchange is just really funny because Willow calls out Buffy and Buffy starts defending herself. But Buffy talks about how Oz didn't join Willow and her claiming that he's so lukewarm and cold. Buffy adding, well, maybe Willow just needs to speed things up by making the first move. They exit the library to find Xander in the halls, but Willow has to peace out to go help Cordy with homework, aka do it for her. She's like, I'll probably end up just doing it for her. I was like, damn, Cordelia and her like hanging out a whole lot this episode, though. I will say, for her to like have hated her last episode, like, or all of life, so we hate Cordelia Club. Now she's like the prime member of the I love Cordelia Club. Like,
I know.
Buffy asking how it went with Larry whenever Xander meets back up with her, and Xander's on edge and Meads. He's like, what does that mean? He's like freaking out about like, he's not a werewolf. We'll just leave it at that. And Buffy's like, okay. Well, there goes our lead suspect. And her beating herself up about Teresa again, but also arriving in her wording about her being mauled by a werewolf, only to realize that the reports actually didn't state as such. They were just linked to the attacks, so they just assumed that it was a werewolf. Xander worrying what else they could have assumed, and Buffy saying in some cutscene transition magic, vampire, over to Teresa's viewing, and Buffy pulls back her scarf to expose the vampire teeth marks. Buffy still feels bad for not protecting her against something equally as bad, moving over to sign her visitor book. Xander noticing while talking that Teresa is rising behind Buffy, and he's like, this bitch is a vampire. And then she hops out the casket and attacks Buffy, struggling with her to the ground. Buffy breaks a nearby easel for a shard of wood, being resourceful as our Slayer always is, but before being able to stake her, is distracted when vampire Teresa tells her Angel sends his love, who kicks the stake from her hand and then rolls over onto Buffy. And then this kind of gives her the upper hand for a second because Buffy's just thrown off by this. Once again, she couldn't go 2 minutes without thinking about Angel. And now she's noticing that Angel is basically sending someone to attack her. So she knows that this is just possibly what the next stages of occurrence are for her life. Like some bullshit's going to keep on taking place with him. Mm-hmm. And Xander comes up behind her with the rest of the easel that has the broken piece of wood on it and stakes the vampire in a awesome ass 2K per slay right here. I really like the stake sequence because it looks cool. And we actually get our first Xander slay because he staked Jesse accidentally in the bronze whenever that girl ran into him and pushed Jesse. But Xander's not killed a vampire on screen. So they gave Xander a really cool slay, and I thought it was cool. I was like, good for you, Xander. Like, you took out a fucking vampire and also protected Buffy in this moment. Mm-hmm. And within that moment, they get up and she's upset by the fact that Angel did this, and she takes comfort in Xander's arms for a moment about how Angel's going to keep coming after her, him saying that he's not the same guy that she knew. And obviously in this scene, I want to know if you got any vibes from it whenever she's like taking comfort in Xander, just from you watching it.
Yeah, of course, like, I follow up with what Xander says right after it happens about his, like, life being complicated enough, basically. But I also think it's just one of those moments where, like, I'm glad it was introduced as, like, this almost thing that happened, because I think it does touch base on, like, how conflicting your emotions can get when you're dealing with something really, like, impactful, especially if it's like a heavy-hearted in nature, which Buffy is dealing with. She's in a super vulnerable emotional space right now, especially when she's allotted these few minutes of her life where she's actively doing something else that's taking her attention away from Angel, just to be slapped in the face with Angel again. I think that's like, it's just knocking you down while you're down already. You know what I mean? And of course, as we now know, this is what Angel's good at. So it's like this impending doom almost for her, where I feel like she has to go on thinking this is going to go on. Like she even said it. She's like, he's just going to keep coming after me kind of thing. And it's not even in this, like, keep coming after me, like he's behind me and trying to bite my neck every 5 minutes. It's like, he's going to keep emotionally torturing me. And I think that makes you so vulnerable and susceptible to situations like that happen between her and Xander. So I'm glad that, like, because you know, we've been pointing out this entire time, and this entire episode really is like all around based on misogyny and being a toxic male. So it's shocking that the episode didn't go there, and that Xander wasn't like, okay, you know, like, I'll make out with you. Probably sure, why not? Yeah, but then, you know, it leaves me questioning a lot, because I'm like, Is he doing it to respect Cordelia? Is he doing it to not overcomplicate his life? Is he doing it to respect Buffy? Or was it just like she pulled away too fast and it was circumstantial?
Yeah.
You know, like it just kind of leaves me questioning a lot of Xander's motives still, even though nothing transpired.
Yeah.
But I do totally understand Buffy's reflex to have done that, because I think you just need something, you know, you need some sort of sense of emotional relief, even for a second. And I totally feel for that. And I feel for her. It just made me sad. Made me more sad for her.
I was curious what your take on it was from a fresh eye perspective, just because so many people get like tripped up on this because of the fact that they might kiss, and then obviously his following comment. I don't ever sense any of this between like Buffy and Xander, mostly because I know, and I'll spoil it, because they don't ever get together. Buffy and Xander are not meant to be together, and like I get it, like you said, like it's an intimate moment kind of thing, just because of like the situation. So I think I've always kind of seen it the same way, but I don't think anything was ever coming of it, or like they were trying to keep it open for like Buffy and him to be together, because I just don't see it. And like some people go off on big tangents about it, and I was just like, I never really saw it.
I don't think that they're trying to foreshadow like anything for them, you know. I think it definitely, for me anyway, as a first time viewer, it was very clear that it was like a circumstantial event that unfolded, or not even an event, a barely there like hint of something. But again, super relatable if you've been in a really like heavy-hearted, vulnerable, emotional space where you just need anything, and sometimes it's not always like the right person you gear that attention toward, and oftentimes it's not, you know, if you're trying to fill a void really quickly. But it's relatable because of that, so I totally understood it, and I was really glad it wasn't like one of those things that evolved into something that it just shouldn't have, you know.
Yeah, I see it on Buffy's end that way, but on Xander's end, he was kind of leaning into that moment. Like he would have probably totally kissed her and went into it if she had done it. And he was just like, oh, I'm not going to date Cordy anymore, because as Cordy has stressed, he is still obsessed with Buffy, especially now that Angel's out of the way. He probably would drop Cordy in an instant if Buffy showed him some kind of attention, or like even if it was sincere, you know what I mean? Like, so that's the only thing that I really get from it in that way. But otherwise, like, I was just curious.
I get it.
Out in the woods, Kane is making some homemade silver bullets so he can kill his prey. The full moon rises, and we shift over to Oz's house, and he's unboxing some shackles to chain himself up with, but interrupted by an annoyingly persistent Willow at the door, who just will not fucking stop knocking. I'm just saying, like,
so annoying.
I'm like, Willow, shut the fuck up. Oh my god. And then he goes and opens the door, and she comes in hot too, without being invited in, by the way. Like, thank God she's not a vampire. Like, she would have been stuck at that damn door. And he tries to tell her that it's not a good time, as she just starts laying into him about everything that she's been feeling.
What am I supposed to think? First, you buy me popcorn, and then you're all glad that I didn't get bit. And you put the tag back in my shirt. But I guess none of that means anything, because instead of looking up names with me, here you are, all alone in your house doing nothing by yourself.
We'll talk about this tomorrow.
No, damn it. We'll talk about this now. Buffy told me that sometimes what a girl makes has to be the first move, and now that I'm saying this, I'm starting to think that the written version sounded pretty good, but you know what I mean.
I know, it's me. I'm going through some changes.
Well, welcome to the world. Things happen. Don't you think I'm going through a lot?
Not like me.
Oh, what? So now you're special? You're a special boy. With chains and stuff?
In this process, she notices too the chains on the table and is like, wait, why do you have those chains? And Oz collapses behind his couch whenever, because her back's turned to him in that moment, and she like notices them as she's made her way into his fucking dining room, as she's just fucking walking through his house like it's hers now. Then he drops behind the couch, and we see him succumbing to the power of the moon. He screams for her to get out, as we see him shifting and her walking toward the couch. Some cool little transitions too, for his hands now mutated on the floor, and it was like a cool little way to do it, practical effect wise. Like, they were actually putting costuming on him to change it, versus like the way we see the werewolf in just a little bit. And whenever she goes to walk over to the couch, because she's like, Oz, you're quiet now, and he like pops up, scaring the fuck out of her. And I love when Willow screams. I'm just saying, like, the way that Allison Hannigan just like full on like screams, it's just like that perfect like teenage girl scream, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then she runs out the back door, and I was like, good for you, Willow, because the stairs were right beside that, and every girl in every horror movie always makes that mistake of going up the fucking stairs to try to lock herself in a room or some shit like that, but Willow's smart. So she does that. She runs outside, she hops the fence, and actually gets away from Oz by hitting him in the face with a trash can lid. She's like, I saw Buffy doing this a couple episodes ago with the vampire in the park, like when I was walking by on the way home from the ice cream shop, so I'm just taking lessons. And she gets away, but conveniently, Kane is driving nearby and he hears the wolf's howl. And then over in the library, Giles is unpacking a tranquilizer gun as Buffy enters, telling him about her unscheduled slayage in the form of Teresa and how Angel sent her. But they can't deal with that energy right now, needing to bag themselves a werewolf first. In the woods, we see Willow again running from Oz because he's like back on her trail. She falls and is about to get Maunch up, but he smells something in the air and he leaves her. And Willow flees, which this scene, I just have to call it out because it drove me crazy. I didn't mention it before, but leading up to this, we've seen Willow's outfit. She's in this wild lime green overalls. They're bright as shit neon green. And it looks good on her with her red hair, so I'm going to award her for the outfit. I like the overalls, and it's a vibe for Willow. Would I ever wear some lime green overalls? No, I would not. No. But I always get so mad, as like, especially as an adult watching this scene, when Willow falls down and she goes to run off, the fucking dirt and mud is all smudged across her ass cheeks, like where she's been sitting on the floor. And then when we get back over to the library where she tells them about it's Oz and let's get back out to the woods, and she turns around to leave with Buffy and Giles, her fucking pants are clean. Like, there's no smudge prints on them. Like, you can tell they did that scene beforehand. And like I said as an adult watching this scene, it makes me so mad because I'm just like automatically in my head thinking about how I gotta go to the store and get some OxyClean and scrub these fucking lime green pants to get this dirt, because the washing machine cycle's not gonna do it itself, or I'm gonna have to go take it to the dry cleaners, you know, shit like that. But then in the next scene, it's just gone. I'm like, what the fuck? I also have to call out Buffy fashion out moment, because this leather jacket that she wears here is putrid. I don't like the color. It's like a gray baby blue. It's not cute, and it's really long. And then they have her hair pulled back in a ponytail, and it's just like a nub hanging back there because her hair's so short. It just, I don't know. It doesn't compliment her in my opinion. Everybody else might love it, but I fucking can't.
No, I hate it too. I totally agree. I meant to do a fashion watch earlier while Cordelia and Willow were in the Bronze sitting on the couch together right before they got dropped down upon by a werewolf. But that Tommy Hilfiger sweater that Cordy is wearing, I was so vibing with it. I was like, why does she look so fucking cute in that? Like, I really, really love Cordy in like a good loungy outfit, you know, because I feel like that's more on the rare end. We always see her like usually very like girly and like,
put together,
you know, put
too.
together. She's
always wearing like
so
sweaters.
It was cute to have her like more relaxed. I was like, look at her relaxing.
Absolutely.
Now that she's with Xander, she got to wear a sweater.
Tommy Hilfiger was the shit back in the day. There wasn't too much they turned out that wasn't cute. I had a lot of Tommy Hilfiger stuff, like from like the early to mid 90s, like a show. I mean, obviously because we grew up in it, but like I had a lot of stuff, and I really enjoyed those clothes looking back on it. Like I would totally wear Cordelia's top.
You ever see a kid picture of yourself wearing a cute outfit like from back then? You're like, damn, I wish I still had that one shirt that I liked to wear every day when I was 10 years old.
No. I keep saying no, like Willow beating at the door, because my parents decided that it would be the best thing ever to always take photographs of me when I was in the ugliest fucking outfits.
Oh. Maybe that's why it's so far and few between that I actually have cute ones. I just thought that it was because they hardly dress me cute.
I'm going to show you the next time I see you when you come here to watch episode 17 with me. There's a photo album that I have, and I'm pretty sure I still have the picture in there of me and my cousin Gary. And my parents dressed me, I think it was my kindergarten graduation. They put me in purple shorts, fucking ugly ass 90s style sneakers with like tube socks, and then had me in a button up white and green striped vertical shirt, and it is just not cute. Like, you're gonna look at it and you're gonna be like, wow, I looked adorable, I will just say, because I'm super cute in any stage of life. But that outfit, as soon as you said, did you ever wear something cute, and you just have a picture of it, that's exactly what popped up in my head. Is that
you're like, hell no, all the things I wore are traumatizing.
All the things. Well, Buffy and Giles start to head out of the library when Willow runs in claiming, it's Oz, it's Oz, it's Oz. They're like, are you sure? And she's like,
can't you just please trust me on this? He said he was going through all these changes, then he went through all these changes.
And Willow tells them that he's in the woods. They're like, let's go. And Willow fears they're going to kill him since he's a werewolf, but doesn't mean to be. And Buffy assures that they aren't going to do as such. Giles is going to trank him with the gun to make him go sleepy. Flashing back over to the woods where Oz is approaching a bunch of meat on the ground that Kane has so nicely put out for him to lure him in, raising a gun to shoot him when he gets into view. But as he is about to pull the trigger, Buffy comes into frame, kicking the gun as he fires, causing him to miss. And now we just got the gun firing off out in the middle of the fucking woods. Great. Taking the gun from Kane, though, and knocking him across the face with its heel. We love to see it because this motherfucker has had this coming all episode. But where Oz attacks Buffy, hoisting her up in the air, Giles can't get a clean shot with his tranquilizer gun, and Buffy is pushed into the three and knocks them down, Giles dropping the gun, which Willow then picks up and takes the opportunity herself to shoot Oz with it, exclaiming to them as he passes out.
I shot Oz.
She's really distressed by the fact that she shot him. Giles is like, no, you saved us. Buffy moves over to grab Kane's gun, him saying, no wonder this town's overrun with monsters. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So he's paid attention to the fact that there's not just werewolves in the area. And he's like, no one's man enough to kill him around here. And Buffy comes up with him with that gun, and she just offers, I wouldn't be too sure of that. And then she just fucking bends that barrel of his gun in his face, making it useless and tossing it back over to him. And she's like,
How about you let the door hit you in the ass on the way out of town?
woo, shit, yes, bitch. And then he leaves. But I was like, if that's not fucking direct symbolism for her bending his fucking dick in half, like taking his fucking gun that he's been shooting all his little werewolves with and being like, actually, I am a girl that's strong. I don't know why I keep imitating me bending the gun, but like everybody that can't see me on the screen. But I like that moment because, like, it's symbolic of the fact that she's like, I might be a girl, but I just fucking did you in, motherfucker. Like, I just took care of the werewolf. Like, it is what it is. She's like, also get out of this town because this is our friend. So, see ya, Kane. Peace. We'll see you over on Angel. He doesn't play Kane. Spoiler. I'm going to keep that. Because fuck it. Why not? Willow, kneeling by where Oz, asks if he will be okay, and Giles assures that he will be sore, but he will be Oz in the morning, where we flash over to the next school day to dialogue that I don't get, because Buffy and Xander are just walking around talking about how it's going to be awkward around him when they see him, and Buffy clearly is talking about Oz in this, and Xander like thinks that she's meaning, or he in his mind is thinking like Larry, because he's like on edge for whatever reason about this whole interaction, and he hasn't even talked about this with Buffy, so like he's basically asking for it to be fucking spoken on, for him to be acting in the weird way that he's acting in this scene.
I know, yeah.
It drives me crazy, so I like bypass the whole thing. I was like, 10 out of 10 could go without this moment, so I'm just gonna act like it never happened in the episode. Except for the part where we see the asshats use Larry's move to knock the girl's books out of her hands so that way they can look up her skirt like they were doing earlier in the episode, and Larry walks by and actually picks up her books and has a change of heart to how he was previously acting. And this right here is just like top tier display of a good person, because you can already see the positive change in Larry right here, and all it took was one episode for him to change his actions. And I think Xander should take some notes, if anything.
I agree.
Yeah, I like how you called that out, that we got that sweet moment later, and like hopefully we'll see some cool stuff from Larry again in the future. Nice. Larry does come over, and speaking of cool things from Larry, here he does come over to Xander and thanks him for everything, confusing the fuck out of Buffy. And Xander is just like, okay, let's not mention this ever. And you know, Buffy's like, what was that about? And he's like, nothing. What are you talking about? I gotta go. Not really, but that's basically how I'm gonna say it happened. Anyways, skipping all over their dialogue after, Willow walks by and they mention how it's going to be straining on their relationship, and Buffy is still rooting for them, even though Xander's being douchey himself again, saying if it were up to him, and Buffy cuts him off as we clip over to Willow approaching Oz, Buffy's words overlapping, telling Xander, it's not up to you. Willow meets up with Oz outside, letting him go first about the situation. He tells her Giles said that he can use the cage in the library to lock himself up each month for the moons. Only he used more words than that, and a globe, apparently. And I like how he's already clocking how Giles acts as a person. Willow apologizes for shooting him, and he mirrors her with the almost him eating her. She had hoped that he would tell her, but he says that he just wanted to get used to it. He didn't know what to say, having just found out that he was a werewolf himself. He offers it may be best for him to stay out of her way, safety and all, but she's reluctant and okay with him being in her way, her admitting that she likes him, listing off how he's nice and funny and how he doesn't smoke. camel crushes. And yeah, okay, werewolf, but not all the time, claiming that 3 days out of the month, she's in a similar, not so much fun situation. And I love that too, because Willow adds the humor and lighthearted spin on the situation, using her monthly cycle as a way to kind of relate to Oz's situation. She's like, well, 3 days out of the month, I have the option of being a complete raging bitch. So, like, you know, you're going to have to deal with that. Let's just hope they don't sync up, okay? Or maybe you'll be a werewolf when I'm on my period, so that way we don't have
And
to
I was going to
interact
say,
with each
or
other.
hope they do, so you can just ignore each other for the same 3 days.
Exactly. He calls her out about being quite the human, and she smiles. They both agree that they would like to still, aka date, but no biting. They both agree to these terms, and she goes to walk off from him as he watches her, but is taken aback by her returning to plant a kiss on his lips, then her leaving for sure, as he says to himself,
Werewolf in love.
we fade to black, and here endeth the episode. So cute. I love it so much. Like, even as corny as that last little thing is, Willow gets her moment to finally kiss him, and she doesn't fucking go balls to the wall on him either. She could have stood there and tried to make out with him. She just plants a kiss on him, saying, I'm still making the first move like Buffy suggested that I should do. And now after this, we can move on to just kissing or making out or doing whatever we're going to do. It's been initiated. So now there's not that, like, when are we going to have our first kiss? It's happened. It's out the way. You know?
Yeah. I loved it. I loved it for Willow, especially not just because she got to make the first move, but because there was no more perfect moment than that one. And I was kind of disappointed when she initially walked away. And I was like, what, bitch, why didn't you kiss him right there? That what? Like, he had the look of it. He had the look of invitation on his face. You could just see he wanted to be kissed. You know what I mean? Like, I would have done it right there. So I was like, I don't even know how she walked away. But then when she immediately came back into frame and you saw her grab his face, I was like, oh, that made it even better. That made it even better than doing it initially. Like, I loved it. Exactly. And I was like, by the end, like, yes.
Yay. Willow and Oz officially. I love it. This is such a fun episode. I think we had fun recording it too. More than anything, I want to say how I love that this episode is just great representation for the queer community. Just how, like I said earlier, it parallels Oz's werewolf coming out, and then Willow and Buffy, as you kind of like brought up and stuff like that. It's just a really neatly done, you know, subject matter to have put into this episode, and all of that context. I really appreciate that as a queer person watching this episode. So there's that. That's pretty much my final thoughts on the episode, because everything else I've given. I like this episode.
That's the final place.
I always look forward to this episode. It's really fun. For metaphor, Mark Fields speaks on dealing with the consequences of actions of the past two episodes. Our werewolf theme opens up some important themes in metaphor. Giles describes a werewolf as representing our inborn animalistic traits, one that acts on pure instinct, no conscience, predatory and aggressive. This is kind of how we see the id in psychology, which, as we've discussed in past, the wolf is attracted to places where there's sexual heat, Lover's Lane, the Bronze. As telling for Buffy in metaphor, it shows her sexual urges needed to be controlled, not repressed, not killed, but kept under control. That's a job for the superego to do, to keep the id from getting out of hand. That's also the message we get from Larry's coming out. He's wolfish beforehand and considerate afterwards. We can also see the parallels here with Oz and Angel. Buffy doesn't want to harm an innocent that can't control what happened to him, and she feels that same way over Angel, and is why she couldn't kill him at the end of Innocence. She is torn because Angel didn't cause what happened. She did, and it reflects in this episode, especially as Angelus has killed the prostitute, Anyos, and Teresa now. Buffy is feeling like this is all her fault and is taking responsibility for it after she realizes the death of Teresa. Like, it just kind of comes full circle to her. She's like, I'm causing people to die because of, like, you know, my relationship with Angel, essentially, even if I didn't know it was happening. She's like unwillingly putting that blame on herself, or I should say willingly putting that blame on herself. Buffy's desire for Angel is distracting her from her destiny, and in that responsibility taken, she can rally up her spirit and subdue the beast, which is what they do with Oz, and later what she will have to do with the angel beast. All Things Philosophical breaks it down similarly, but in his take, the metaphor could be viewed directly from a self-image standpoint. As Oz is coming to terms with who he is and what that means, Larry comes to terms with who he is as a queer person, and Willow questions if she makes the first move on Oz, would that consider her to be a slut? Altogether, this all fits the mold for what I would take to be a self-image self-image guidelines. As we all know, a positive self-image can contribute to higher self-esteem and positively impact a person's self-worth, aid them in fostering positive relationships, and help them with identity and with their representation, which is deeply ingrained in oneself. And this episode does a good job at bringing those things for our characters to a healthy place versus the opposite route. I liked more All Things Philosophical take on the episode and what the metaphor and subtext was going on and how they broke it down versus Mark Fields did it, because he kind of took the spin as like the overall show. All right, I'm gonna hit you with this BFF, then Buffy fun facts. Obsession for Dorks is a quote from Cordelia, obviously in the episode that Xander put too much of it on, whereas Obsession for Men was a huge Calvin Klein perfume around 1998 in the late 90s. So it's a play on that. Rob Desotel, aka Manuela Desotella, stated about this episode, Phases is probably my favorite episode of the 5 that we wrote. Oz just has an ability to pinpoint what's going on and make it sound absurd. I think there's a sweetness to him. In Phases, Willow comes up to him and says hi, and Oz says, that's what I was gonna say. Like, it's just, it's cute, his dialogue. During self-defense class, this exchange was cut. Xander was apparently supposed to say to Cordelia, whenever they're in self-defense class, he's telling her, be gentle with me. And Cordelia looks over to Willow and is like, you're first. I wouldn't want to be accused of taking your place in line. And Willow is like, oh, I think you pushed your way to the front long before this. And Cordelia was supposed to reply, hey, I can't help it if I get the spotlight just because some people blend into the background. And Willow was supposed to reply, well, maybe some people could see better if you weren't standing on the auction blocks shaking your wares. Cordelia replying, sorry, we haven't all perfected that phony girl next door bit. And Willow was supposed to end it with saying, you could be the girl next door too if Xander lived next to a brothel. I get why they cut this, because why would they have this dialogue and then have the moment that they have later in the bronze?
It doesn't fit. Yeah, no, they're very friendly in this.
But I was like, this was part of the script originally. What the fuck?
I mean, it was confusing enough to have Willow say like 1-800 I'm dating a skanky hoe or whatever, you know, because then you see, like you said, she very like in a non-petty fashion is having very cordial conversation and exchanges and doing Cordelia's homework for her and shit like that. So it's like, yeah, that would have just thrown me off even more. Like, do they love each other or do they hate each other, or what the fuck's going on?
It's a love-hate relationship.
It's a normal female friendship.
There you go. Let's move into our final slays.
Final slays.
Everyone, we already recorded the final slays one time. We are now going back and re-recording. All right, great. What was your quote from the episode?
So my quote for this episode is when Buffy says, in other words, your typical male, when they're talking about the characteristics of a werewolf, basically. And I was just like, well, that's on fucking brand. What about yours?
I had two. Mine was Giles whenever he was like, let's not jump to any conclusions. And Buffy's like, I didn't jump. I took a tiny step, and their conclusions were, because, of course, I had to choose that one. And then I also like when Willow just simply comes in the library freaking the fuck out with her dirty ass pants, smudge stains all across the asshole. And she goes, he said he was going through all these changes, and then he went through all these changes. Just Willow always has the best dialogue.
I love it.
Who did you award Shining Slayer to?
Who did I award Shining Slayer to?
We gave it to Willow, Courtney. We both were unanimous about giving it to Willow for this one, just because of everything she had to deal with, the fact that she shot down Oz in the end, and also was desperate to protect him once the reveal happened too. She was like, we can't let nothing bad happen to Oz. And then, you know, they're in love and all the things. We just mutually agreed on the Shining Slayer. What was giving you the weekly wigs?
The misogyny, the parts of the episode where Xander unanimously bothered us with his own misogyny, probably is awarded my weekly wigs, because this episode in particular really highlighted misogyny now that we're talking about it.
It really did.
Yeah.
I know that I said Kane and his misogyny is what mine was going to be, just because he had that hate towards werewolves. And like, and then I went on a tangent about the kudos to Buffy for ball busting his ass after his comments and bending his gun in front of his face before tossing it back to him. And then I was like, emotionally damaged. It was a good fuck you, slap you in the face moment, because this girl is clearly stronger than him, and she displayed it right there before him. As I was saying a second ago, though, this is the second time we're recording this because we had some microphone issues, and we have already done the Slayer predictions once, and I already told Courtney that Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered is our next episode. And this bitch squared it up, like, to the T. You want to reiterate your guesses? Because they were, like, so spot on.
I think I said something along the lines of maybe something about a spell or something witchy. Bewitched, some sort of love element. And I don't know, what did I say to round it off? I think I said something about like someone's getting a spell cast on them and something about some love situation.
Yeah. And then I went into Breadcrumb You and I told you about the fact that it was Valentine's Day and it was a Xander-centric episode.
Oh, well, yeah. And that's probably where I said it's a love spell of some sort, or definitely that kind of vibe is what I'm getting. I'm seeing a cauldron, a spell book, not the burn book, but the spell book.
Nothing was as good as that first take though, but you were really surprised within yourself. You're like, I'm getting good at this. And I was like, yes, finally. But this one kind of gave you a little bit. I mean, just the word bewitched, because you were like, you were already on its trail just because of that. Either way, that's our episode that's coming up next week. Thanks everyone for listening to our coverage of phases. Do you remember when you found out about Oz being a werewolf? And what do you guys think about Cordelia being hot on Xander's bullshit this episode? And the reveal of Larry actually being queer? Let us know by sending us an email or a DM on Instagram, and we will be back next week to discuss Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered. And I normally wait to reveal our guests on social media, but I wanted to let everyone know that for that episode, we will have Franca Bonacci, he's Italian, former co-host of the Juliet Landau Slaying It podcast, joining us to cover that episode. So that's sure to be a good time, and we will get a chance to talk to him about the episode, some of what happened with Slaying It, how that intertwined with us over here on Revamped, and also give him the chance to promote his upcoming new podcast release. So stay tuned, and we will catch you guys then.
Oh.
Pardon?
Well, last night was the night before the full moon, traditionally known as the night before the full moon.
Meaning the accepted legend that werewolves only prowl during the full moon might be erroneous.
Or it could be a crock.
Well, unless the werewolf was using last year's almanac.
Looks like Giles has some schooling to do.
Yes, I must admit, I am intrigued. The werewolves is one of the classics. I'm sure my books and I are in for a fascinating afternoon.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Buffy on Revamped. Remember to join us next week for a new episode release as we continue our journey through Sunnydale. We also would like to hear from you, so share your thoughts. Discuss with us your perspectives on this or previous week's episodes by following us on Instagram and sending us a DM at revamp_rewatch podcast.
Or by emailing us at revampedrewatchpod@gmail.com. Additionally, we will be choosing one of your messages to shout out in an upcoming episode release. And if you happen to love abandoned places but prefer them vampire-free, check out Echoes of Elsewhere, an urban exploration podcast, where I interview urban explorers about the eerie spaces they uncover, anything from haunted schools, forgotten mansions, and tunnels that probably don't lead to the Hellmouth. From history to mysteries, tips and tricks of the trade, I dive into all things Urbex. Subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Until next time, the Earth is definitely doomed. This podcast is dedicated to the Buffyverse, to its fans, and my sister, Tiffany Dawn Pearson.